everyone's having a great day. Coming here from Colorado. Kind of dark and murky here the last few days, which we actually could use. We need some moisture here. It's so crazy dry. I'm gonna have to ask my guest how things are down in his part of the world because he's from Texas. But we're gonna bring him on here, and I'm gonna mess it up. Ben
Leman. That's it.
Lamond.
Leman. Yes,
Lamond, not without the D, right? Not Lamond, but
correct. Leman. Ben Leman. That's it. Thank you for having me on your show, Randy. I'm excited to have the discussion with you and look forward to it.
yeah, great. I appreciate you joining us. I see you're from Texas. So how's the weather been down? You guys been as crazy dry as we have this year?
Oh, recently we've been getting some good rain. We haven't. It's been a little spotty, hit or miss. At times started to get dry, but it seems like the rain comes just in time to keep everything moving forward. But right now we've had some good rain, so temperatures are okay. They still haven't heated up to 200 degrees yet.
And
Uh,
humid?
what's that?
And humid as well there?
Humid and humid. Yeah, it's a little humid right now for sure, but it's good. It's no complaints here.
Great. Well, for everyone out there, tell us a little about yourself, where you're from, all the important stuff.
Yeah, so well, I'm been happily married for 22 years. We have four children. We live out on a rural setting, out on a ranch out here in central Texas. We've lived here for 20 years, and so that's a big part of our identity and who we are. Fourth generation Texan. Let's see, I'm a businessman. A manufacturing is my background. I've been served as a county judge. I've served the public as a state representative in the capital here in Texas, in Austin. And then also love to. I'm an adventurer. I love to go to the wilds lands of Alaska. I spend a lot of time out there, and to the mountains of Wyoming and Colorado and Idaho. Do a lot of hunting up there for elk. So just kind of a bit of a world traveler as well. Just a lot of adventurous type hobbies that I have. So that's a bit about me.
So the ranch. So how many acres do you have?
Well, we got enough that is hard to take care of. I think we it's about 550 to 575 somewhere in there. Yeah.
And what type of animals do you have out on your ranch?
Cattle. We've had the entire gamut of animals pretty much. At one point or another. Right now, I mean, we've always had cattle. We always run cattle, and so that's a big part of what we really do at the core of the ranch. But we've had goats, we've had pigs, we've had chickens, turkeys. We've raised them all. We process them all here at our place, and we eat them all. So it's that's been fun. You know.
And horses too, I'm imagining.
Yes, we don't have any horses right now, but we've had our fair share of horses over the years, and horses are kind of they're kind of tricky. You better have time to ride them and make consistent use of them, or else even good horses will sour on you and aren't as friendly out there. So as life gets busy with four kids and the rest of everything going on, sometimes you don't ride them as much as you need to or should, and they're not as cooperative. So.
So, usually you think of a rancher, you're riding the horses out there to herd the cattle and everything, but you must use more modern equipment to do all that type of stuff, vehicles and stuff, I'm guessing.
Yeah, yeah, we use the ATVs. That's the main way we get around and find our cattle during calving season and make sure everything's okay, or if there's fences that need to be repaired. Those ATVs are pretty handy. You can carry a lot of things in them, a lot of tools, and they can carry a lot of weight and go through a lot of debris and mud. And so, uh, much easier than a horse for sure. Yeah, but a horse is it's more romantic, right? It's
Right. Classic,
the,
right?
the classic John Wayne riding across the pasture. We've all seen ourselves do that for sure.
Yeah, yeah, keep those fences fixed, I'm sure too. I'm sure that's a constant.
I'm sorry, it was hard to hear you there. What was that?
Fixing the fences, is that a constant battle trying to fix the fences?
Oh yeah, yeah. Fixing the fences is always it's a battle for multiple reasons. You know, whether it's trees falling down or cows, pushing through, or other bulls, busting through the fence or over it and crushing it, and water flowing through it can carry debris and try to take it out. So it's a constant battle on the fencing, but you just go through it before you put the cows in that particular pasture and make sure that the fences are in good shape. Great job for a young son to handle.
And you have a young son that helps you with that?
Oh yeah, I have three. We have
Great.
three young men and a daughter. The oldest is 20 and the youngest is 12. So they're at a good age where they can help quite a bit.
That's good. So you mentioned hunting. So are
Yeah.
there other hobbies that you enjoy? You went to Alaska, you've been to Colorado, or what
Right.
other things do you do and does that help you decompress from the struggles of the world and all those things?
Yeah, I mean, those do help me decompress. In Alaska, I like to go fishing in Southeast Alaska. That's where I go and spend a lot of time there. I really enjoy that. Hunting elk is what I do up in the mountains there. And then I do a lot of reading. I enjoy reading. I've always been a big reader, continue to read, and enjoy that. But I do other things. We travel. My wife and I travel quite a bit. Been to Scotland as well multiple times, which is my book. It focuses on that history, and then but I also I'm a pilot, a licensed pilot. So I've enjoyed flying small planes. So kind of a little bit of everything there. But I don't sit and be idle very well.
So Alaska, that's the best way to get around is flying. I mean, especially if you're trying to get into the back areas. So I'm assuming you did a lot of flying up there as well when you were traveling up there?
Yes, oh yeah, absolutely. You're right. The place I go is 75 miles by boat, and sometimes we take a boat because we have a lot of supplies. We have a boat that goes back and forth, uh, but a lot of times we fly. If you're not carrying, if you just have a suitcase, or people coming in to visit, that to the location, then they just take a luggage, and hop on a plane much quicker. Yeah.
So you mentioned you like to read. So have you always been a big reader when you were a youngster as well? And who were some of your go-tos when you like to read when you wrote?
Yeah, no, my all-time, so answer to your question is yes, I've always read as a young person, throughout college and afterwards. I've always read many books, and I'd say, my number one all-time favorite book on the planet is by Heinrich Sinkowitz. It's a story, actually it's a trilogy, and the first book is With Fire and Sword. And he's a Polish author, actually, and this series was in Poland was their number one bestseller for almost 100 years, and they finally did a translation that was remarkable. The guy that translated it into English did an amazing job, and his name is on the tip of my tongue. Who did the translation? But he was very talented. But anyway, that's my all-time favorite book. And I love that style. It's historical fiction. It's just really well done. So that's been a good one. Another historical fiction's always been my favorite genre. One of my other favorites is Jeff Shara. Of course, Gods and Generals, but he also did one series or just two books on the American Revolution. He did two on the Civil War, but he did two on the American Revolution, and I really preferred those. I thought those were very well done. But those kind of books, those are the kinds that I really enjoy, and those are some of my favorites.
And you pack those with you when you go to Alaska, or do you have like an e-reader to read them on?
No, no, I read. So I've read the Heinrich Sinkowitz. I've read that series three times in my life. I read it every 10 years, like clockwork. I read it. It's just long enough where I forget the details, and I have to go back and kind of refresh. It's not like you're reading it for the first time, but you do forget a lot of the details. So I get to relive the visceral sort of feeling there when you read it. But no, when last time I was in Alaska, I read Michener, Alaska. I don't know if you've read that, but that's a wonderful book. He wrote one about Texas as well. I really like that. Those are comprehensive historical books, but he tells it like it's nonfiction. A lot of the characters in there I mean, I'm sorry, fiction.
Right.
it's but largely historical based, but there's some fiction to it. It makes it a little more entertaining.
So you said you've been to Colorado. Since I live in Colorado, I got to ask you what places have you gone in Colorado?
Oh yeah, go to Grand Lake, Colorado all the time.
Oh, Grand Lake on the other side of Rocky Mountain National Park.
Yes, sir. Yeah, you bet. It's a pretty little spot. It's grown quite a bit there
Yes.
over the last 20, 30 years, but we've been going there for a long time and enjoy that area. It's beautiful. We love to hike. We go hiking all the time up there. I like hiking better in Colorado than Alaska. Less bears, less brown bears.
We
Yeah.
do have a lot of elk here too at times. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
you're right for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Running around, especially around Rocky Mountain National Park, you'll usually see them there if you're driving over Trail Ridge Road and stuff.
You're
So,
right. Many
yeah.
times, done that many times.
So has Texas then been your home your whole life? And have you lived on a ranch, or did you grow up on a ranch as well?
No, so I grew up in a rural area. It wasn't a ranch; it was more like a small farm, small farm. But we did have some cows, and we had horses, and we, had a garden and all that, and chickens and stuff. But it was smaller scale, and but it was rural. It was rural. And after I met my wife, she was a city girl, but she agreed to take the plunge, and we moved much further out into a rural area, and she never it stuck. She loves it out here, and so I love it out here. Our kids love it out here. It's been a great and wonderful life, just a great environment on which to raise a family and focus on each other in this busy world.
So we want to talk about your book, but I'm curious, how long have you been? Did you write when you were young as well? Did you always enjoy write stories? How did that all kind of evolve over time for you?
Yeah, it's an interesting story. So I was the answer in the first part of your question is I didn't write historically. I did not. It was really in 2013 when it landed on my head like a lead weight. Really, I was literally I was visiting one of my dear friends, a good friend of mine. He was a mentor, and his wife, said I could come visit him because he was having a good day, and he was dying of pancreatic cancer is what was going on, and it was very fast, and so I got to visit with him, and after the visit, I was leaving his room, and he had uh, went unconscious. He fell asleep and just low energy. And as I was walking out of his room, he's like, "Between the tines," he just kind of yells that, and I didn't know what he said, and so I turned around real quick, went back to his bed, and was at the bedside and said, "Hey, John, I don't understand. What were you talking about?" And he said, "But he was coming to, and he was said between the tines." And I said, "What do you mean between the tines? I don't understand." He goes, "That's what you're going to call it. That's what you're going to call your first book, Between the Tines." And when he said that, he was real alert, you know. And so I started to ask him, "Well, John, I don't know what book you're talking about." And he you know, we had a very short conversation, didn't get very far at all, and he fell back asleep. Went unconscious, and he didn't get back up. So I left, and I never had that chance to talk with him about that. But it was at first I was like, you know, geez, thank you, John, for obligating me to writing a book. Of course, I'm going to write it since you said that on, as your final words here to me. Of course, I'm gonna agree to write it. So I committed right then and there. I committed I was going to write a book, and I didn't know what it was going to be. I didn't know the topic or anything, but I knew I wanted to make it meaningful. Right? I wasn't just going to do something halfway or anything like that. And so I really put over time from that point forward, started really putting a lot of effort into figuring it out.
And was he, and the book is what, Celtic in nature or Scottish or?
It's Scottish, but a lot of those that history intertwines. So in the book, they do go back and forth between Ireland and Scotland. And some of the clans are Irish clans, and but the whole book takes place really in southwest Scotland, and then a little bit of Ireland and Northern Ireland, where the two are very close, and so yeah, it takes place in the 1640s, at a crazy time in Scottish history, one of the most controversial and uh, really complex times in Scottish history.
And was he of Scottish descent too? It's just interesting that he would just throw out that title. Did he have
No,
any background there as well?
right? No, we didn't get to discuss the title where that came from in his mind, but uh, he was not of Scottish descent. He was of Italian descent.
Yeah.
Is his primary ethnicity. So what? Here I was, I had this title, and I wanted to, of course, make something a book that would fit it. And so, as eventually, as I started to research what was where I wanted to go with this book, I explored different options. There was my background. I figured leadership might be pretty good. I ran a sizable company. Was in elected office, but I quickly pushed that aside and thought, people have heard enough from their elected officials these days. Let's switch that gear. So really, it started as far as how I focused in on this Scottish, historical book novel. It was started with some family research. I started, reading about some family research. It led me to my fifth great grandfather that fought and died in the American Revolution. He had just come over from Scotland to Ireland, and from Ireland to the colonies at the time, and he fought and died in the Battle of Monk's Corner in American Revolution. And so he was there just 3 or 4 years prior to that, and so that itch kept growing. Well, I got to thinking, well, why did he leave? What was going on in over there that was such a struggle that he left? Well, it just turned out, and it ended up like a root system underneath a tree, right? It just splintered off and shot off in all kinds of directions. As I started to do more and more research, the story got very, very broad. The history, a lot of significant, connected in some way or another, and it just got really dramatic of the three kingdoms. And so you had one king, King James, that ruled three different kingdoms simultaneously: England, Scotland, and Ireland. And all three of those were having a civil war at the same time. But the Civil War drew people from either both countries into the one country, right? So you'd have some people from England come in, and Ireland come up from and fight in a battle in Scotland, right? Or the same thing in England, or the same thing in Ireland. And there were many sides, and you'd have unusual allies that did not seem like they were a good fit. And so that sets the stage for a lot of treachery, right? A lot of manipulation, a lot of broken promises, broken loyalties, a lot of changing sides, and it just a real dramatic backdrop. I mean, in actual history. And so as I researched the events that took place at this time, I mean, it hit me like just right in the face. I was like, this story needs to be told the right way, and it just grabbed me. And that it totally connects with Between the Tines, the title, in several ways. Of course, Between the Tines refers to the antlers, the points of an antler of a red stag. That's what the title is referring to in my book. That's what I assigned that to. And the tines of the antler, the points of the antler, represent the danger right? That represents danger. That's its weapon. That's how it attacks other animals. That's how it defends itself. And so between the times is between the dangerous moments, between the dangerous time, the dangerous aspects of life during that time. And so it's a great fit for the novel. It also, in my novel, is an actual tavern. So at the time in the 1640s, uh, places were not referred to by a business name; they were referred to by a physical description. So you'd have a tavern with the red door, or a tavern, with the blue door, or whatever. And this place was the tavern between the tines, and that referred to two sets of those red stag antlers that were mounted on either side of the entrance of the door, and that was the place that really fed the community. It really was the networking and place where the family gathered, the Lamet clan leadership gathered there.
So we're going to throw the cover up here. So, in effect, this is kind of, it's historical, but it's still somewhat fictional as well of the research, or how do you want to describe what the genre is for this?
Yeah, it's a historical fiction novel, is what it is, but it's largely based on history. So, for example, like all the battles that are in the book actually happened in real life. The outcomes of those battles actually in my novel is consistent with history. What the results of those battles. There's one battle in there that is made up in the beginning, and it's just a really creative way to draw the reader in. But so that those are all very much based on history. A lot of the individuals in the novel are actual people that were in history. The clan leaders, a lot of the people that the characters that you'll read about in there are actual people in history. There are made up people as well, but many of them are actual people. A lot of the events that are not battles, but are just events that were significant, actually happened as well. But where the fiction comes in, I describe it like this. There's a lot of documentation on what happened in history, right? What the date of something happened or the outcome of something. But what there's not a lot of at the time in the 1640s is evidence of the motivations for what happened. So there's a lot to be left to the imagination, a lot of interpretation that occurs. You can read about other people's opinions about why things happened the way they did, but finding primary resources for that is very difficult. And so, what I did through my research, I pieced together what I believe is one plausible story that threads together the motivations that I see happening, that I see unwinding at the time, as to what not only what was going on, but where it led to ultimately a crossroads where one clan that was drawn into a conflict with another neighboring clan had to decide, were they going to stay there and defend their land that they've had in their clan for centuries, or are they going to make a different move and pursue another direction that would ensure survival. And so it's a tough decision, but it certainly was a crossroads.
So obviously this requires a lot of research. So how'd you keep track of all this? You have a lot of notes, or are you one of those that can keep it all kind of up here and straight in your head?
Yeah, well, I think first it took me, I needed to wrap my head around the big picture of what was going on, like truly understand it. So my research began with a lot of history, reading about a lot of history at the time, because they use words like Covenanters and Royalists, and there's Confederates, and there's all these different sides. I don't know who's on what side, right? And these people are working with each other sometimes, and not the others. They're allies in one country, but fighting each other in the other. So it is so complicated. So I started off just having to understand what was going on, right? What was going on, and so that was what really I needed to understand. As far as, once I knew this was a story that was worth telling, I needed to understand the backdrop so I could accurately figure out and describe these various motivations. So this is not a story about that backdrop. This is not a story about the War of Three Kingdoms. This is a story that you don't ever hear about. It is clan on clan violence. The violence between clans was very brutal in Scottish history at various times. I mean, there was genocide going on, genocidal attempts, and for various motivations. So after I understood all of that, then as far as my research goes, I know there's too much of switching around and manipulation and all these different moving pieces. I could not keep it all straight in my head. I'm the type that I wrote it all down. I just basically used an Excel spreadsheet for some of it for like summary topics, but when I got to ideas on or questions about that topic, I'd switch over to my Word document and just go to work, filling out all these questions or concerns or ideas about a specific topic that matched that spreadsheet, and just really was able to research piece by piece, right? Every little segment of my book until I really felt like could come up with a good rough outline, of a story. And that's where it kind of started. Right, that's when I really started writing.
Yeah, I could see that, a spreadsheet, flow chart, whatever, to try to keep track of all the connections and I'm sure, like you said, they fractured at times and maybe would go another bring in and have someone else become an ally when they were actually an enemy before, and whatever worked well for them, I guess, to succeed, I guess, in some cases.
Right. Well, I think their key goal in many cases was to survive. To survive. Some were on the opposite side of that. They were trying to expand their power, right? They were using this backdrop war going on as an opportunity for them to pounce on a weaker neighbor, and take their lands from them or something like that. When maybe one of that weaker clan's allies was gone to war, they were kind of isolated and alone, and it was just an opportunity type thing. So, yeah, it's interesting. It was difficult, very complicated to keep track of.
So when you started to piece it all together, how long did it take to get to the point where you were ready to write the book, and then how long did it take you to to really write it?
Yeah, I think it took me a good while. The research and doing what I described with the Excel spreadsheet and the Word document. That I'd say that took. I mean, heavy at it took me 6 months. And that was before I started writing. That was really just really understanding it. I mean, I'm doing other things. That's not full
Yeah,
time.
yeah.
So, but once I got to that point where I felt like, okay, I know where I'm starting this story and I know where I'm ending this story, and I have a bullet point sequence of events and a timeline that actually occurred in history, and I understood enough of the backdrop and I understood enough of the details where I could then begin writing a fiction-based historical, a historical fiction novel that is really true to history, but really breathe life into these characters and just go deep into their thoughts and minds. And so that's when I started writing. But I will tell you that my research continued as I began writing. I would also, get to a point. Okay, I need to know more about this. This is a complicated situation, and I'm not seeing the full picture here. So I'd, drill down even more and fill in some of those details of history in my mind before I would figure out a good way to demonstrate that in the book. But but yeah, so I mean, it took me writing a full year from when I started writing to when I turned it in to be the to be to for the review copy, ready for reviews, uh, which is a digital version, of course, and that was a full year, 13 months actually.
And then, so the book just came out today,
Yep.
right? Release
Yes,
days
sir.
today.
It's a
Always
big day.
exciting. Your first book coming out. We'll put that. back up there again. So the oh geez, I just forgot my train of thought there. What I wanted to ask you. So a year to put it together,
Yeah,
to finally write it all.
yeah.
And I'm assuming you had an editor. Did you have like any beta readers, anybody like that help you
Yeah.
out as well? Give you provide you feedback?
Yeah, so that was, that I described that, I guess, the first half. Now the second half was the hard part, right? That the first part, to me, coming up with the content and the storyline and the basic fundamentals of the book was the easy part. And for some reason, it came really well to me. But getting it right, it's like instead of using a rough paintbrush, you need the fine paintbrush, and you have to really get your lines right and defined, and that's where the rubber met the road for me. So I did have, I produced my first copy, right? My first draft, not copy, but my first draft of of my book, and I circulated it to my beta readers at the time. Did not circulate it to my developmental editor yet. I wanted to get some feedback from just a little bit. Well, the feedback came, and that was a tough spot because it's difficult for a lot of authors to step back from their own work and look at it and be objective. But I've learned in my business life, I mean, there are consequences for bad decisions, and it really doesn't matter who comes up with a good idea or a bad idea. It's knowing the difference between the two and taking and responding appropriately. And so as I put this first one together, I was already a little suspect of how I approached it because I felt my underlying themes and goals of what I wanted the reader to take away had changed. In the beginning, it was more historical and entertainment, but as I wrote it, it just kept getting deeper and deeper. And I saw a vision. I had a vision of what I really wanted, like, to devote myself to. And this book is book one of a trilogy. Actually, it's a trilogy, and so the story got brought deeper and longer, and as I did the more of the research. And so what I realized was this deep, serious tone of the themes that I have in the novel did not match the characters' personalities, did not match that appropriately. It's kind of like if you had too much humor in a book that was ended up being having a serious undertone, it just kind of takes away from it, right? And I didn't develop that the way I really wanted to, and that's kind of what I needed to really hit a home run there. And so I stepped back and I did a rewrite. I did a rewrite of it. It much improved that connecting the characters' personalities and deepening their thoughts and just in dialogue to really take the reader in a little deeper. And so then I circulated that to my developmental editor. And of course, after you do that, you have to rewrite again. You know that. That's just the rule. For some reason, that's just the rule. And, she loved where I was headed with it, but she made some tremendous points that, I just had to agree with, that I needed to even go deeper. Like, there was so much potential in this novel. I just had to pull deeper on the dialogue and the thoughts, and just really eliminate. Also, one thing that she really helped me do was eliminate some of the noise, right? As I mentioned, this was a real complex story, and it's easy to have little branches that go off because you want to tell all these wonderful, amazing things, right? That are impressive and neat to talk about, but uh, they take away from every time you do that. You're taking away, if you do it too much, you're taking away from your fundamental goal of what you're trying to get across. It's confusing. You're confusing your reader on what you're actually trying to get across there. So she helped me eliminate some of that, which gave room for me to also deepen some of those interactions.
My editor always, when I get it back, lots of red, if you're using Word, lots of red. She'd go, "This doesn't advance the story. Take it out."
Yeah.
She'd say that a lot. And you may get that, maybe what yours does as well. So, yeah, you do hear that a lot. And it's like, yep, you don't need that. It distracts from the story. Get rid of it. Yeah.
Right. Another good point that like those that you're mentioning, yeah, she helped me do that. Basically, that's what I was alluding to. These little things that you add that maybe don't really need, you know. But one other thing that she really, I felt was really good was really honing in on the this underlying theme. Really identify what it is you're trying to have the reader take away, because I really wanted this to be a deep, impacting story, right? Something that was thoughtful, and that question she helped me come to really hone in on was, what was it that was going on in the lives of the people that settled in the colonies in the 1640s? What was it that was going on that was so terrible that they would be willing to leave their homeland and go start over fresh, with no economy, no buildings, no roof over your head, no food on the in the garden. They literally had to carve it out, everything out of the ground. So you're talking about a major decision. So that's an amazing story, but it's also a story that is not unique to Scotland. Scotland's story is just one thread. Every country has a thread that the similar story at some point in its history that things got so bad there that people fled that country, right? They went to various countries, but a lot of them came to the colonies or America later in history. I mean, there's examples all over Texas. There's German towns that were settled by German communities. There's Polish towns. There's Czech towns. I mean, there's all kinds of different communities that settled in areas across our country, and so I liked to, I think this story is just one thread, and I think it can help bring people together. Connecting the old world to the new world, and because all those stories are similar. They were leaving some sort of struggle caused them to come over here, and it can be, whether it's slavery was a struggle. These in Scotland's history, there was a big struggle there. In Ireland's history, same thing. These struggles are what caused people to leave, and either by force or by choice, and that helps us understanding though our history like that helps us realize that we are more similar to each other than today's world makes us feel.
So you said it's going to be a trilogy. So have you started on book two then?
I have. So, yes, I have. So, book two picks up where book one left off, and it continues this story. So, I mean, it's very different. It's not just like different version of the same story, that we're going to do in book two. It's all very different because the story progresses, right? The book one ends, and the path to that they eventually get to continues. But that path has a lot of different types of struggles, different types of considerations that are equally engaging, equally exciting. I mean, book one is a fast-paced book. Between the times, it's engaging. It sucks the reader in. They don't want to put it down. It's just that kind of book. They just want to keep reading it. And all the feedback I've gotten has been like that. And so it's book two is going to be very similar to that.
And do you have a title yet that you want to tell anyone, or you want to keep it quiet for now?
No, I do have a title. It's Behind the Mask is book two, and I'm not going to say what that refers to yet, but it's clever, and so it'll be a piece that the reader will want to understand what that means.
And nobody whispered that title to you in advance, right?
No, 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 nobody did.
I just find that fascinating. There's a lot of books, a lot of my books I've written, I've started out with a title.
Yeah.
It was my idea, but I don't know if I've ever heard anyone say someone else told them a title. You're going to write this book, and
Right.
this is the title.
Right.
That's quite fascinating. I think
It was very
very
fascinating. Yeah. Actually, when I was said it earlier. Gee, thanks, John, for obligating me to write this novel. At the time, I didn't have time to drink a cup of coffee. I was so busy at the time, but committed. I was like, I am going to write this book. You know,
Well, and you said that was what 2013, so it's
right?
obviously took some time. You
Yep.
were a CEO of a company. I mean, that can be a busy job, to keep you
Yeah.
busy. So,
For sure. And during that time, I traveled to Scotland. I mean, I went to a lot of these battle sites. I went to the castles and stood there in the ruins. I looked out on the ocean that they were looking out on. I walked the grounds they walked on. I went to a lot of the locations where these significant events happened, and just really tried. I think it brought me closer in to the characters and helped me understand them better. Talk to the locals in the community to learn more of the stories about what the legends that were in the area. So I felt like that was a very important to portraying what their life was like.
so are there any graveyards there from those battles still? And some people say they go to the Civil War areas and stuff, and they feel like the ghosts are present. And did you
Yeah.
get any of that as well when you got there?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I went and tracked down. There's this little church. I think it's in Kilfinnan, if I remember right, uh, uh, Scotland, and it's on the coast in southwest Scotland. And when you go to this little church, there's a graveyard there, and I got to see a lot of my ancestors' graves that were there. But underneath the church, they store all the chieftain tablets for Clan Lament that go back to like I want to say it's 400 AD, 4 or 500. I have to go back and double check what year, but the chieftain tablets are, the chief of each clan is an individual, of course, and these tablets basically one gets made. It's just a big stone, looks like a headstone, but it's full length of a body, or longer, and it's not to go over a grave. It's like a wall ornament or something. It's documents who was the chief of this clan for that period of time, and and I mean they must have had 10 of them under there, or more. But I took pictures of it, and they had it, enclosed where you could look through these screen walls and see them. But it was, I mean, that was that kind of feeling where you felt like the ghost of Christmas past for sure, because it was dark, it was kind of eerie, and you're looking at some very historical stones. I mean, they've been around for way over 1,000 years. I mean, they go very far back. But yeah, so I did walk around to the grave. I went to a monument where a major event happened where one clan surprise attacked another clan, and I mean, it was just brutal. What they did to the people there, and learned about the details on that. Stood on that ground, stood where it happened. So it really connects you to the story.
So is the book, are you independently published or are you more traditionally published, or how are you sitting with this
Yeah,
book?
I'm independently published. I self-published this. I looked at going the traditional route and interviewed with publishers, and I decided I did have a publisher that wanted to publish my book, but I decided not to. I didn't, and I'm sure it's different for different authors. People that maybe have been published and have a following and have a lot more to bring to the table. But as a new author, I think it's very difficult to get a quote unquote a really good deal because it's a wild card, and it's not a knock against the traditional publishers. It's just you're not proven, and so how is the world going to receive your writing? I just feel like you're not at a good. My business mind kicked in, and I just said, I'm not at a good negotiating point here. I don't have much to negotiate with, and I'm just not going to negotiate that way. I don't. I'm gonna go ahead and keep all my rights, and I'm gonna do it because you end up having to spend a lot of money marketing your book anyway. Either way you go, and you have to do all the work either way. I just didn't see where it was going to bring a lot of benefit to me, or I didn't expect that. And so, I went the self-publishing route, and I'm excited. I think it's been a great experience. I did hire a consultant that helped me navigate that process, and so I they helped me get the developmental editor, a copy editor, a illustrator, and the all the different various people that you have to put it all, format it, get it all in there, blah blah blah, get it all uploaded. So that was good. I'm glad I did it this way. I did it so far. I think it's been a great experience, but we're going to find out soon. How it does. So.
So what stage are you at in the second book? When do you envision that you think it'll be ready to go?
Well, I've started it, so I've written the first three chapters, and that was important in my mind. And maybe different people have different ideas, but that transition from book one to book two is very important. Transition in my mind, how you start book two after you leave book one. And I wanted to write that transition and make sure it's like getting off in a good direction from the get go. While the whole direction of the story and how what I was thinking was really really fresh in my mind. And then from there, I'm doing the research right now, and I've done bullet point outlines for not the whole novel, but for a significant amount of it. I've gotten to started my timeline and identifying significant events that continue to document the path that these people went through, and then started just continuing to fill in the blanks on that research. So that's where I'm at right now. But I expect it to be another, I would say, year and a half to a year to year, say year and a half to finish writing this next one, because you know I'm self-published, but I've got to research. Like I mentioned before, it took me 6 months to research book one before I started writing it, and it took me a year to write it. So there's a year and a half right there. I don't think it's going to take me as long to that process this time, because I really have it down now, how my process is and how I want to do it, and I know the direction and everything. But what I didn't have the first time was the marketing of book one. So that takes a lot of time as well, and so obviously, and so I'm going to focus right now on making sure that I'm as I'm doing, doing my research and writing a little bit here and there on the story. I'm making sure I stay focused on promoting book one, start moving forward here for the next several months, to make sure it gets a good market penetration. And then I'll, kind of switch gears back to promoting or focusing on book two.
So you've been totally immersed in this series so far, and I often ask other authors this, so I'm not sure if you have an answer for this, but I'll ask you anyway. Is there another book that you've thought about that you want to write that's outside this series that's crossed your mind as you've been, or is this book pretty much just taken over and that's the only thing you're thinking about right now?
No, no, absolutely. What I have, and the what I'm focused what I want to do is write this same type of novel from multiple countries' perspectives, right? So, like I'm doing it from Scotland. Well, I want to pick another country. Maybe it's Poland, or maybe it's France, or wherever where there's a significant event that occurred in history, and tell this story from that perspective.
Yeah, I mean, there's
And
plenty of stories out there. I mean,
right.
and throughout history, I mean, we've had this type of conflict forever. So,
Yes. Yes. And I apologize. I'm looking at the screen right here, and I see how I'm getting dark. It's starting to get dark here in Texas, right?
I
So
noticed you were getting. It seemed like you were getting a little darker there.
let
So,
me I'm gonna turn the light on real quick. I'm
oh,
sorry about that. Voila. Now there we go.
no,
You
that's
can
there.
I can
There we
see.
go. Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Oh,
so we're about 50 minutes in here. So we're getting close to the end. So I always like to ask this. Yours is a little bit different perspective. The name of the show is Bringing Life to Characters, and a lot of your characters are based on real people. So what is it that you're looking for when you're finding those characters when you're researching that really stand out to you that you think, oh, this is going to be a great character for a book? Is there anything you're usually looking for when you're doing that?
Yeah, the first thing I really hone in on there is that the character has to be believable, right? It has to match the character's personality has to match what people are, envision people were like at that time. In this case, in the 1640s, you know, and so I think the personality is you have to get it right. I think that is critical. In order to get it right, you have to understand the pressures at the time, of what was going on in society. It's kind of like saying people's personalities in the Great Depression versus the 50s. You know, those two contrast very significantly. And take somebody's in the 50s. It's a happy time that people often say is that one of the happiest decades in the country's history was in the 1950s, supposedly. I wasn't there at the time, but that things were on the rebound after the world wars. So uh, I think that is critical, and then getting the dialogue right, where not first of all, the point of view of that character, you have to really bring that reader deep into the thoughts and mind of the character, thoughts, their dialogue, what they're observing. Everything is told in historical fiction through the eyes of that character. So you have to connect that reader to that character. And so surface level thoughts or surface level observations don't do it. I don't think they get it done. I don't think it connects the reader deep enough for if you're going for a deeper book, a deeper story. And so that character's personality has to match that. Their thoughts have to match it, and their dialogue has to match it, right? Their observations, everything they're thinking. So uh, I think that's one of the most challenging parts for sure.
Is there one central character that really carries the book, or do you have a lot of different characters and you're seeing from their various points of view throughout the whole story?
Yeah, there's lots of different characters. There is a main character. The main character, Aaron Lamont, is the son of the chief of Clan Lamont, and he's the main character that the point of view is told through. But it does jump from chapter to chapter. There's several characters that are very significant roles in the book, and then there's characters outside of those as well that play important roles, but they don't have as much. Their points of view are not given, but they do have very significant roles. And so there's women in my novel here, that this historical fiction novel, that actually have played a very big part in history, and I highlight that. I bring those women to the forefront of the story and elevate them to demonstrate how important they were in history at the time, because women don't get much credit for playing big roles in historical events at that time, because it was such a physically dominated time period, and so I really wanted to highlight some of that. And so yeah, no, it's a complex story, and there's a bunch of characters that go with it.
So, you're a first time author. This is your first book. Do you have any advice for those out there that want to get into this crazy world of writing a book and trying to market it and everything else that goes with it?
Yeah, I would say, this is the first book I've published. I would say before, what I actually did was, before I wrote this book, Between the Times, I needed to I decided I need to figure out my process to writing before I write my real book, right? And so I picked a different topic, a different subject, years, several years before I started this one, and said, I'm going to write this just to figure out, how do I write a book? How do I write a book, right? You write a book your way. I'm going to write one my way. Everybody has their own process, but I didn't know my process. And so I didn't want to go out on my first novel and try to, on such a complicated topic, and try to figure out my process at the same time. So my suggestion to somebody that wants to to write a book. They've got their idea. They know what they want to write about. They're passionate about it, but they've never written a novel. My advice, or a book, my advice is to practice on something else first. Figure out your process, figure out how it works, and figure out how to look at your product objectively with the help of others before you go write your real book. Because I can promise you, your second book's going to be a lot better than your first.
Good advice. So how about marketing? What do you feel about marketing? That's always a struggle, especially for independent authors, getting your name out there. And
Yeah, I would say, you know, obviously time will tell. So this is my first novel. We're starting today. I'm not
yeah,
proven yet. I feel like we're doing great. We're off to a great start. We're getting a lot of traction, and moving up rapidly on the Amazon list, of bestseller type stuff. But I would say this is complicated. It's not something you're going to figure out on your own. How to market your book, I don't feel. I feel you can stumble your way through it, but if you're looking for your first book to be a home run type, or a big hit, you're going to need some help if you're not familiar with this new world in self-publishing. I mean, self-publishing has changed the whole industry. I mean, when you think back to traditional publishing days where I mean, they determined what the world read. That they were the filter, and that was it. If you didn't get with them, you didn't get with anybody, pretty much. I mean, for the vast majority. But in today's world, the blessing of self-publishing that has brought so much more to the market on the supply side of books to read, at the same time has created, and it's obvious to me, it's created a lot of noise. There's a lot of books out there doing the same thing you're trying to do, and it's the question of how do I elevate mine above the rest of the noise. There's a lot to that answer. There's a lot of answer to that question, I should say, and it is not easy to figure out, and you can miss your opportunity if you don't do that right.
well, and I have 16 books, and it's an ever evolving challenge.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's always, and I'm independent as well, but yeah, it's always changing, it's always evolving, and if you can get help and you can afford help too, that's part of it too. But like I said, publishers can help you a lot and all those
Right.
things. So
Yeah.
yeah. So that's good. So how can people find you? We're gonna throw your website up here.
Yeah. Well, that's the best way right there. benlemonauthor.com. And from there, you can log on to my social media of your choice. I have them all linked up there, and you can just click which one you prefer, and use that one to follow me. Stay up to date on the progress on book two. Just up to date with the events that I'll be having, and book signings, and speaking engagements that I'll be going to, and then also podcasts like this. Where we can discuss the different aspects of writing, and the novel, and all of it that this industry has. It's very complex, and there's a lot to it. But yeah, and so you can sign up for my uh, email as well. I have an email that'll go out every uh, weekly or biweekly email list, and so you can sign up for that. But yeah, and you can learn more about the book and my background. So I appreciate this opportunity so much, and enjoyed visiting with you this evening.
And the book's available just on Amazon, or is it available on other?
Yeah, yeah, it's available. I mean, it's available everywhere. I mean, you can go on Barnes and Nobles. There's a pretty much everywhere, really, from what I understand and have seen. So but Amazon is the main one that I think uh, uh, will have one of the best prices, there. And so, yeah, Amazon, and just Ben Lamont between the times, and it'll pop up, and it's available hardback. Yeah, paperback, hardcover, and ebook right now. We will be coming out with an audio book We're going to move forward with that, but that's not available yet.
Yeah. Yeah, that takes some time.
Yeah, right.
Well, and will it be a challenge for the narrator to, are some of the names a little tough to pronounce?
I tried to stick with a style of the names or a style of writing that really is more modern. I put a lot of thought into that, and that's a tough question, right? Because you're trying to bring the reader into that time period and suck them in there and surround them with everything of that time to make them feel like they're back in time in history. But I have found when I read books that use words that I'm not familiar with, and a lot of them, which Gaelic has a lot of words like that,
Hmm.
very unfamiliar with them. It really you lose a lot. You lose the reader if you're not careful. So I use some of those words, and I didn't make them the more difficult ones, right? But and the names similarly, I didn't use the crazy names that are hard to pronounce, and everybody's saying them differently. They're pretty standard, but are true to that time period. They were used in that time period, but they're the simpler names of that time period.
And then you mentioned signings. Do you have some signings coming up?
I don't right now. I do not have any scheduled.
Right.
I am been approached on those, of course, but I've been pushing that off. I just want to focus on the digital side initially, getting doing the podcast. I'm doing a lot of these. I'm doing a lot of focusing on conversations aside with strategic marketing efforts, but I am going to be doing events and book signings. I just have waited until I try to build a little bit of a following first.
Sure. Yeah. It's tough when it's one book,
Right.
to get people to come, but
Yeah.
it's fun. It's enjoyable. So
Yeah.
hopefully you'll be able to get out there, get away from the ranch,
Yeah. Right. For sure. For
go to
sure.
Scotland. Hopefully, maybe sell a few books.
Yeah. There you go. There you go. Sit down in front of the castle. Everybody that comes there.
That's right. Sit there with a little table and.
That's right. There you go.
All right. Well, Ben, was there anything else you wanted? We're a little more than an hour, but I think we covered everything. Was there anything else that we missed?
No, I think that was great. Just really enjoyed it, Randy. Thank you so much for having me on your show. I'm excited. Today's the big day,
Yeah.
and thank you for sharing it with me.
Yeah. Best of luck with the book. Appreciate you being on release day. Hopefully, you sell tons and keep working on book two.
I
That's
will.
they always say once you get the first one, it's like, well, you got to get a second one.
Yeah.
And then when the second one, well, you need a third one. So it just keeps right on going. So yeah,
Yeah. Oh, well, I'm excited about book two. We're
yeah,
gonna follow through and get it done. And there's book three as well. So I'm just as excited to write book two as I was book one, and we'll keep plowing through it.
well, maybe we'll get you back on the show when that comes out
Yeah, would love to.
sometime next year or the year after, whenever it is. Right. So
Right, right.
all right. Well, thank you, Ben. Appreciate it. Take care. Good luck on the ranch. Hope the weather works the way it needs to. No tornadoes.
Right.
Enough rain that you need, but not too much rain,
Yeah,
and all those things, right? So,
right. For sure. For sure.
all
All
right.
right. Thank you, Randy. You have a good night.
Yeah, you do the same.
All right. All right. Bye bye.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it. My next guest will be on May the 4th. May the 4th be with you if you're a Star Wars fan. She's not a Star Wars writer, though. Pat Daly will be my guest, be at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. So hopefully you'll check out that one, and hopefully you'll be checking out Ben's new book as well. Take care, everyone.